just haven't got the lungs to there. When I was playing the harmonica when I was a kid, my old lungs stuck out there looking like a prize fighter, you know. My lungs stuck out. I never worried about. I had plenty of air to blow one of these big long harmonicas, but it takes the lungs, then it takes practice, so you develop your lung, so you can hold your air. And I can see we just have it here to play, just Mom and me together. We never advertised this. You fellas got more advertising here than we've had in 50 years. In fact, Mom and me has been married, you know. It'll soon be 50. 50 how many years, Mom?
9.
59 years. I forgot, you see, the last 2 years up on there. 59 years we've been married together. And, you know, it's just as good, quite as good, but then what would you expect? I have trucked, I have been in the dairy business, I've farmed, I had a berry and fruit ranch called the Bonita Spring, which I took up from virgin soil and planted it into 28 varieties of table grapes, 7,500. And I growed all kinds of berries, every kind of a berry that I could find all over the world. I used to run a store, a general store. I had to have everything from a needle to fit your sewing machine, a bullet to fit your gun, and different pills. In fact, you name it, I had it. And so we always give the break of the scales. We give just a little over all the time, and made it a point to do that so that they would get their full value. And if a bunch of kids from school would come in and half of them or 3/4 of them had money to buy suckers or a candy bar, do you think that I could let the rest of them go out watching these little fellers eat? We always give them. And I can see that we've been paid off many times all our lives.
Illinois in 1886 and have lived in Las Vegas since September the 4th, 1910. We bought this property and built this house, and both of my children were born here, Bruce Beckley and Virginia Richardson, and they are still in town living within my call. We had in the car that my husband bought an Overland. My husband was in business here from 1910 until 1941. And we own the building. We own the building at 2nd and Fremont, known as the Pioneer Club, and it is still known by that name.
Mr. Will Beckley had a man's furnishing store, the only one, the first one in Las Vegas. And I used to buy clothing and socks and pants and shirts from Mr. Beckley.
I am sort of an old-fashioned person, I guess, because I don't value money above everything else. I think a good, clean life is good for everyone. And in the early days, we had lots of people who believed that way. But we have a lot nowadays that do not believe in living a good, ordinary Christian life. And I'm proud of my family and my friends. And I like Las Vegas, but would like it much smaller than it is now.
My father and my mother both were individuals that were in the transition of the old and the new, but they still retained much of their Indian heritage.
En I minä vuokka so. No hinnan. Bunga vuokka kotoida. No hinna vuokka. So vuokka so. Hinna var. Hinna on näivä sokkan. Ne vaaka miten. Sukka nää devataan ne suvaisinkin mä.
There's so much history in it. That's the thing, you know. Trying to bridge that gap in history is a thing that really fascinates me. You know, I recently read books on the basket makers, and I've always just thought the basket makers were a tribe of Indians. That's how stupid I was, you know. And I didn't know that the existence of these people 3,000 years ago.
Well, we just talked about where he worked at the ranch since he said he was on the ranch for 65 years, worked there 1906. This is my brother, Henry Dave from Winnemucca, and we're the Shoshone tribe. Well, I'm Jessie Evans, and I was born July the 3rd in Owyhee Reservation. I first came to Las Vegas in 1924, and when I came here, it was so different from up there. It was cold when we left up north, and it was nice and warm here, and everything was, the mesquite were just bursting in leaves. My husband came down with Mr. Harrington and his father, with my husband's father, George Evans, and then they held a pageant over there at the Lost City.
See, the pageant was first year 1925. This is one of the first big, you know, nationwide stories we received, outside of course, the discovery of Pueblo Grande hit practically every major American and European newspaper. Willis himself was truly a very modest man. I doubt if very many people that he worked with all those years there in the city knew that he was in many, many scientific journals. Actually, you might say, he's a rather famous man to the early archaeology of this area.
Well, that is my husband and I, try to give them education where neither one of us got the education. And that's the reason we try to make them go to school and try to get a better education than we did. To do it over again, I think I'd be a better mother and a better grandmother. There's some people I admire that's really good and all that, but myself, I wouldn't say that for myself.
Oh, just look where that evening sun has gone. Oh, just look where that evening sun has gone. Gone down behind the mountain and it won't be back till morn.
That was Roy's big love. He always loved to film everything he could get his film to focus on, as well as tape and recording it. I'm Mrs. Carrie Christensen, and I have to say I came to Las Vegas, Nevada as a bride in 1933, about July 14th, and I've been a resident here during that time. And as a bride to Leroy, my late husband, it was fun starting to get set up and thinking about building a home. So when Leroy and I came back to, after the honeymoon was over, we came back and we went over the desert looking at sand dunes and mesquite bushes and all sorts of things. And I said to Roy, well, let's buy up. He said, you wouldn't want to buy up all this sand dune out here. You know, it's nothing on it and that never will happen. Though I was interested in it, I would have loved to have a couple of sand dunes, and especially it was centered around where the Strip is today. I came to Las Vegas, as I said before, as a bride, and just started right out living. The desert was all very new and interesting because I was in love. You know, love hides a multitude of faults around. We're busy building air conditionings and trying to help through the neighborhood. He never said no to anybody. When he started a project of his own, someone would always want a helping hand, and he was that type of person to give a helping hand to anyone, from building a house to painting houses and free gratis.
Oh, just look where that evening sun has gone. Oh, just look where that evening sun has gone. Gone down behind.
So I think that Las Vegas has been a, how do you say, oasis for me, and it really is an oasis now.
We left Idaho Falls coming down here to Vegas. We heard from it about a friend of ours that said about the Boulder Dam. So we thought we'd come down here and work. So we started out in 2 old Fords. We had a lot of trouble getting down here, and it took us about 4 weeks to make it. Then when it took us a day and a half or 2 days to come from Moapa into Las Vegas, the roads were so bad. And we lived out on the Mitchell's Ranch until we could get a place in town to stay. And after we got a place to stay, I went to school for about 1.5 years, and then I went over and asked him for a job at the railroad. The man asked me, he says, how old are you? And I told him I was 21, but I was 15. I says, and we had a hard time trying to get my age straight. But finally we got it straight, and then I started working for the railroad. I worked with a lot of fellas there, Bill Fitzgerald and all them, and a lot of these here old timers is Archie Coleman, Sam Nettles, and Harris, and different ones. And then I worked there till up here just a few months ago, and I retired. My grandfather, George Stevens, he was coming into Salt Lake. He was with Brigham Young's outfit. Green Flake, he come into Salt Lake with Brigham Young. And my grandmother, she came in with him too. There was a fellow by the name of Ted Eyre. Him and me got into an argument, and I told him that me and him was brothers. And he wanted to know why. I said, well, I'm a Mormon too. And he says, oh, you can't be a Mormon. I said, well, I have a book to prove it. And I went and got a book that I got the history of it. And I showed it to him, and he kept it for about 2 months before he ever gave it back to me. And he looked in the book, and he found out that Green Flake was my great uncle, and his name is up there in Mormon Temple at now. And so he finally come to me and says, I guess we are brothers then. You want to know how I feel about life in general? There's only one thing I can say, and that's treat everybody like you want to be treated, and you'll get along in this world.
I think this was just a time we grew up in, where you'd shake hands on something. You never had to have a written contract.
Happy child at home, and the memory I can see, and the memory I can see, landing out upon the hill, landing out upon the hill, in the shadow of a tree, in the shadow of a tree. If only I had the way, if only I had the way, she could give my heart a thrill, it could give my heart a thrill, just to simply wander back, to the cabin on the hill, to the cabin on the hill.
Well, it was different, and you knew a lot of people. When you go uptown, you meet somebody that you know, and you visit with them. And now you go uptown, and you don't know one person. You never run into a person that you knew before.
I don't like it today. It's too large. It isn't Vegas anymore.